I expect you're just thinking, where's the samples, isn't it? Get them out. But yeah, and if I should faint, just pass me down to the bar. Okay. So anyway, I wasn't going to title this talk before tonight, but then I gave it the title "Food for Thought" because you'll see what happens as we go along, because there's a few surprises in it. But I want to take you back to 1976 to begin with, and I was on a school trip to America. I know what you're thinking. Who goes on a school trip to America in 1976? Well, I did. So anyway, school trip to America. We were staying with host families out there. And one night we were sitting with our host family and having a Mexican meal. And I was a guy from South London who was brought up on Grandma's cooking. So I mean, I very much liked just the traditional English food. And anyway, so we went to this Mexican restaurant, and it was the first time I tried Mexican. I didn't really care for it very much at all. But anyway, the other thing that happened that night, it was back in 1976, was the host of our family, he actually sort of announced that at that particular time the world population had gone through the 4 billion mark. So when you think that we've actually been around for about 2.8 million years, so we started off very gradually. So we went to the 4 billion mark. So this is a bit out of focus, but as you can see, we started quite a gradual incline of population, and in the 1960s it tended to rise quite dramatically. I don't understand why it should do that at the time. There's a steady rise, but by 2050 it's actually estimated the population to be 9 billion people, and that's really only 30 years away. So we've gone quite a leap since then. But it begs the question to me that how can you feed 9 billion people? For this to happen, food production is going to have to double in the time up to 2030. Problem with that, land is very scarce, water's getting more scarce, resources are less, oceans are overfished. There's a lot of climate implications. So you probably think a lot of people are now changing to sort of plant-based diets, becoming vegan, but it's not actually the case, because meat consumption is actually on the increase on the planet. You can see there's quite an increase in the amount of meat that they eat in China. We seem to have sort of like leveled out in Europe. North America's still steady rise, but the rest of Asia and Africa, they're increasing their meat production. What that means is there's going to be a lot of pressure on the land to actually create that amount of meat that people want to eat. I'm actually a nutritionist, that's why I'm sort of speaking about food tonight, but one of the things that I'm quite interested in how our diets have evolved, and they've evolved very much on a Paleolithic type diet. So I'll just get the dry mouth. So, you know, meats and fish have been very much a part of their life. Leaves, tubers, nuts and seeds, that's been our diet up to now. So we have never had a great emphasis on the grains in the diet. And equally, when you think about it, if we do go down the grain route, we would probably be limiting ourselves to about 4 types of grain, sort of like rice, soy, wheat and corn. So we want to talk about the nutritional side of it. So what's missing? What could be missing in our lives that we could actually rely on to eat? So I'm going to talk about insects. Insects have been a staple of a primate diet for years and years and years. And now you're all looking forward to the samples, aren't you? So it's something that we actually share in common with primates. And if we go back to our caveman days, we used to eat insects. We were the hunter-gatherers back in those days. But hunting was a really dangerous occupation. It only had about 20% success rate. So we relied very much on the gatherers to actually gather the rest of our food. So they go around gathering tubers, they go around gathering leaves and sort of berries and fruits and that sort of thing. And also they would gather insects for us to eat. Also, it's been part of the Bible scriptures and Muslim scriptures. It's often reported that we used to eat a lot of locusts in those particular industries. On the planet at the moment, there's about 2 million people that still that do eat insects out of choice. So this is a market out in Africa where they're selling lots of caterpillars, and there's about 1,900 species of insects that you can actually eat. And here in Thailand, we've got another insect stall. So the most common insects that are eaten are beetles, followed by caterpillars, followed by bees, ants and wasps, followed by grasshoppers and crickets and locusts. And I think then we go down to termites, and then we go down to dragonflies. So they're the sorts of things that you can actually enjoy. Also, because I'm a nutritionist, they are extremely nutritious. They're a very, very nutritious food. They're packed with protein. They contain all of the 9 essential amino acids. Essential amino acids means that they're essential. You've got to have them in our diet. Meats and sort of insects are some of the few things that actually have all 9 at present. They're also a great source of fats. Omega-3 fatty acids are a very high source of that. They're high in iron, high in calcium, high in vitamin B12. Vitamin B12 is an important vitamin for energy, and we only really get that from sort of a meat-type diet, but it's included in insects as well. It's also very high in fibre. The actual exoskeleton of a lot of insects is made up of something called chitin, and we actually still have the DNA in order for us to actually digest it. So we still are able to digest that particular fibre. Go back here. So there's certain environmental advantages to feeding on rearing insects. If we actually go down the road that we are as far as livestock's concerned, they actually produce a lot of greenhouse gases, mainly methane from their poo, also from nitrous oxide, which is very damaging to global warming, and carbon dioxide. And if we look at this particular slide, you can just about read it. For every gram of protein per kilogram of mass gain, if you look at beef cattle, they will be producing a lot of greenhouse gases. If you look at the cricket and the mealworm, it's almost negligible. So there's a lot of environmental advantages for us actually eating crickets. They're extremely energy efficient. Because they're cold-blooded, what we feed the insects in order to rear them, they don't need any of the feed to make heat because they're cold-blooded animals. So they're extremely energy efficient. If we look at this, for every, you can't see the whole slide, but in order to, the feed that you need to make 1 kilogram of protein from a cow is 20 kilograms. For a cricket, it's 1.7 kilograms of protein feed. So they're extremely efficient as far as making food for us. Also, if you look at the amount of water it takes to rear 1 kilogram of protein, if we're looking at cattle, it's actually 1,500 litres of water for one kilo of protein. And we look at the cricket, it's 1 litre. So they're extremely efficient as far as water conservation on the planet is concerned. They're also great at reproduction, as you probably know. In 6 years from 1 cow you'll get 4 cows, but in 6 weeks from 1 cricket you'll get 200. So they're extremely easy to feed. And also you can feed them on waste matter. That's another, so we can cycle our own waste to actually rear crickets and rear protein. So they could be used actually as well just to feed other animals. So if we just carry on down the livestock route, we can use bio-waste to rear insects, then we process the insects to make feed, and then feed the livestock on that as well. But they can be part of a bigger picture as far as the environment is concerned. If we look at this, and we use large-scale insect rearing, they can go directly into feed to feed livestock. They can become food that we actually eat. This is then processed, this is then process the organic waste back to actually feed the insects that get it as well. And they are also used for pharmaceutical industries and non-food ingredients as well. But we have a problem. And the one problem we have, and you will probably all partly feel it here, is we have what we call the disgust factor. We actually think that there's a Western prejudice against eating insects. We actually think that they eat insects in other parts of the world because they're starving or they've got no other food to eat. They actually eat them because they're a delicacy. They're very much in the region of like a shrimp used to be back in this country. A shrimp and lobsters used to be poor man's food, and now they're. I'm sure everyone here enjoys a shrimp and a lobster. So, what can we do with food? So, how can we eat insects? We can eat them in a stir fry. So this is a Thai stir fry where you can actually sort of see the different insects and grubs in there. We can use them as a snack, and I actually have promised you a snack. So, has anyone here ever eaten insects? Great. Do you enjoy them? Great. Okay. And who else would like to try it?
Yeah, I'll try it.
There we go. These are actually grasshoppers. They're chili flavoured.
Right, that's it. Very nice.
There we are. Would you like a grasshopper?
Oh, no. Yeah, good cop out.
There you go. And this right here. Any more bags? I'll grab it round the other side. Is there anyone here that hasn't tried insects? That's what most.
I'm a vegetarian.
Right. Okay. Well, the thing is, what you probably don't know is you probably eat about 500 grams of insects a year anyway. They actually work their way into our food chain. In the FDA in America actually has legally allowed amounts of insect that they allow in certain food products. I think in tomato puree it's like 65 insect parts are allowed in the tomato puree, and so many fly eggs are allowed in other foods as well. And this is actually so if you think you haven't eaten insects, you have. I actually did the grape picking at Alfriston last year. And you know what goes in that grape press, is don't think you haven't eaten insects because you have. So anyway,
should they be moving?
Yeah, they should be moving. Oh no. Yeah. I spoke to an insect firm that supplied these, and they said they're very nice if you actually soak them and they plump up and they become a different texture. They're very crispy now. But going back to food, so they are actually what they are at the moment is what they call a novel food. That's how they're legislated in Europe. They're actually legislated as a novel food. But they come as snacks, which you've got going around there. They come in at the bars. They come in. They also can be used to sort of form foods, rather like vegan foods where you get vegan burgers or something like that. You can use insects to actually sort of like form foods that we actually do recognise as something else. So hence to make it a little bit more, get over that disgust factor. Cricket flour, and all sort of like flours, sort of like there's mealworm flour. You can buy these. I must say at this stage, because it's a business in its infancy, they're not sort of cheap, you know. They could become a cheap food, but they're not cheap now. But I might bake the old cake with cricket flour. It actually increases the protein dramatically, so it actually becomes a very healthy snack. It becomes a very healthy cake, you know. So whereas a cake's normally very starchy, a cake made with cricket flour is very healthy and nutritious. You can buy books. You can buy books to make your favourite recipes. So this is the gourmet guide to edible insects called Creepy Crawly Cuisine. So you can get that on Amazon if you'd like to. You can also have the Eater Bug Cookbook, which is revised. So obviously, you know, it's sold more than a few copies. So you know, that's something else you can have. One thing, just to remind everyone, so like. Before I finish, I don't know whether I'm going out of time, whether I've been quick or short or what, but insects are a very important part of our lives. You know, so like the fact is that we cannot live on this planet without insects. They can very easily live on this planet without us. So that's the very difference. And for every man, there's about 2,000 kilogram weight of insects. So they outnumber us incredibly. So actually, it's probably not a planet that's inhabited by men. It's probably more a planet that's inhabited by insects. So that's something to bear in mind. Without the bees, and who likes mosquitoes?
No.
Okay. Did you know that mosquitoes are one of the main pollinators in the insect world? So actually, we need mosquitoes as well. So you know, so give it up for the poor mosquitoes. So, as I say, it's a new industry, but I think there was a serious side to this because we do have this problem of how we're going to feed the world if we get to these populations of 9 billion. By using insects, we will actually stop some of the deforestation happening. One of the reasons that we actually deforest all the rainforests is to make more land to grow food for ourselves and for feed for cattle and that sort of thing. So I will leave it with you and just ponder this thought for everyone here. Are insects the future of food?
Well, there we go. Who knew? I had one of those. Cricket? Was that a cricket?
That was a grasshopper.
A grass. Okay, there's a difference, is there?
When you become a connoisseur, you taste the exquisite taste of the grasshopper.
Yeah. I'm going to steal a question first. For example, what do wasps bring to the party? You mentioned that mosquitoes, but you know those bugs.
Wasps actually are a great sort of pest control themselves. So wasps, there's a great hierarchy between all animals. You know, sort of like you get the insects that will degrade waste. They go up. They'll be eaten by lots of animals. Lots of animals eat insects, birds, and primates, and all sorts. And then they're eaten. You know, we may eventually eat them, and then we get biodegraded right back, and then we become food for the insects. So there's a whole cycle going on.
Yeah, brilliant.
But wasps do fit into the picture as a good being.
Okay. Well, they can live for a bit longer. Any questions? But yes, at the back.
Okay. The flour, what does it taste like? Do you know it was any different to...
Yeah, I'd say it tends, because it's very high protein, it can actually be a little over tasty. So the best thing to do when you sort of start to experiment with cricket flours and milk flours is to mix them with other flours as well, rather than just have a cake made entirely of that. So there can be a bit of a heavy flavour, and they can make quite a heavy cake. You know, it's worth experimenting. It's worth having a bit of fun. I mean, it'd be great to have people around and sort of bake a cake, and then they're all eating it, and you say, you know what it's in there? Well, you might not want to do that.
No, sorry, I was just wondering, because if you're like gluten intolerant or something like that, would that be like a great alternative?
Yes, it's gluten free, obviously. Yeah. So it's Yeah, insects are very edible to us, so like, just go back to that whole primate thing. We still have the gene to digest insects, and they were a huge part of our Paleolithic diet, because we got this impression that we were always out hunting and we were always eating the woolly mammoth, we were always eating the saber-toothed tiger. It wasn't like that at all, we were very much reliant on creepy crawlers.
We just sat around eating bugs.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Yeah, I can see. Yeah, at the back. Yeah.
Is there any nutritional value lost by drying out the insects?
I can imagine there probably is something. Yeah, I think it's like any processing of food. At the moment, yeah, we're talking about very processed foods, aren't we? We have to process them, because I think in order to get over that disgust thing, we have to process them. I mean, if I sent around a tray of live whatever, they're all flying. I mean, I don't think I've had many takers at all, but as they're processed. Yes, they will lose some nutrition, sure, but we still have the fibre content, we still have the protein content. Some of the vitamin content may be lost, and some of the fats may be damaged.
So better to eat them live, I think.
Yes.
Sorry.
How's Italian vegetarians?
There's a lot of debate. Yeah, there's a huge amount of debate whether this is another talk entirely. Actually, it's another talk entirely. There's a huge debate about whether vegans will actually eat them because they see them as animals. But there's so much out there that actually plants don't want to be eaten either. I mean, I don't want to get into a big debate, but it's like there's certain things in plants that they actually produce to actually stop us eating them. There's some of those things we can become intolerant to. So I think it's very much dependent on the person himself and how they feel. Then no one's going to say it's okay for you to eat or whatever. It's a personal choice, like everything in life. But I think it's a valid food for the future, though. As everything's concerned, because I think if we go down the whole road of vegan grain, which I think we do have to eat less meat. There's no doubt about that. We have to sort of weigh in our the amount of meat that we eat. But if we go down the grain route, as I say, there is a danger that we will just end up eating four things.
Boots. Yeah.
Yeah. Not a question. A slight friendly challenge.
Yep.
Okay. And what's something that you said?
Yeah.
You said that about the deforestation is for reducing more arable land.
Right.
I would say to you that the deforestation is because of the value of the hardwood, and the land that's left, arable land that's left, is a byproduct of that. Maybe that's the case. That they're doing something with it. Yeah. Think about wasps. Wasps eat crane flies and daddy longlegs. Daddy longlegs lay leather jackets which destroy plants.
All right. Yeah, there you go. There you go. Great. Thank you very much.
Any other question? Yes.
I would counter your argument that we need all to stop eating so much, rather than making more food for ever increasing.
I think that is definitely the case in the West. We could do with eating less. But maybe in some other countries. Sorry.
And throwing away less.
Throwing away less, and that's where insects come in. Insects come in, and they can feed on the waste. There's quite a few papers. I've got a paper there that's talking about this whole way in which we're going as far as meat eating is concerned, and how we have to look for some sort of alternative. But I am with you. We could eat less. There's definitely an argument for eating less. It's about. I actually feel that it's a whole. There's a real sustainable. This is just one piece of the puzzle. There's a big picture out there of lots of things that we can do. Eating less is one of them, definitely.
How long before we're going to see them as part of the M&S meal deal?
To be honest with you, I think we've got a way to go. So I think we've got a way to go.
Killick question. Yes.
Slightly related to your question, without sounding completely cynical, and given that we are driven more or less by market forces, really,
yes,
I think the decision is not really ours. No matter how much culturally evolved we become with regards to insect eating and that sort of thing, ultimately it's just up to the corporations when they decide to invest on producing this and that. I think it's a fair assumption. But this is not to say that we shouldn't be putting pressure on alternative, sources of food, which is an excellent idea. I mean, I consume insects regularly.
Yes.
I don't eat meat really. And I recommend it personally and politically also. It's a much better option.
Yes. Yeah. No, I don't disagree with what you said. I think big food is still a big thing in the market. It's got a lot of lobbying power within governments, and we shouldn't be naive to think it hasn't. So,
A question at the back, and then we'll just take
Sorry, where do you currently buy this stuff? Because it's not, I'm sorry, it's not in Aston.
No. It's just,
There's a thing called the internet.
yeah. that sample we was going around comes from a company called Crunchy Critters.
Okay, now that's what I meant.
Yeah. Crunchy Critters, which you can look up online, and they're based in Derby. So that.
Okay, do you just put in insect stuff?
Yes, it is.
Careful. Just be careful. But there's a big disclaimer underneath the bar.
You could use the word entomophagy, which is actually used in.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Excellent. Crunchy critters. Yeah. One final question, and then we'll take a break.
Can we just add a sort of Darwinian logic to this, that if there's not enough food to feed 9 billion people, then there won't be 9 billion people?
Yes, you could add that logic as well. There's definitely, we're definitely in line with some kind of natural disaster, I'm sure, but I can't predict that one.
Well, there we are. What a note to end on. I think we're imminently
See my insects.
imminently to face a natural disaster. We're going to expire with heat. But yeah, that was a wonderful talk. Fascinating subject, insects. So thank you very much, Mark. No, I have one. I'm working my way to the whole thing. But yes, so Mark, that was.